We first told you about Laura Levis a few months ago after her husband, Peter DeMarco, wrote a Globe magazine piece about her death and what he learned in the years after. The story detailed numerous emergency response, healthcare system, and individual failures without which Laura would likely be alive today. In his piece, DeMarco told of how Laura walked by herself to Somerville Hospital as an asthma attack was coming on around 4 a.m. on a September morning in 2016. As surveillance video shows, she walked up the hill, found two separate entrances at the hospital, neither of which had a visible emergency room sign. She chose one, but found it was locked. And as her attack worsened, she got within 29 feet of the unlocked door, but couldn't make it. So she sat down on a bench, called 911, telling the operator she was in the parking lot. The problem was that her call had been routed to a regional operator at a Mass State Police Center 18 miles away, and when that operator transferred Laura to local police in Somerville, her attack had gotten so bad she could barely speak. At one point, dispatchers sent an ER nurse to look for her, but surveillance video shows the nurse stepped just outside the locked door and looked out for only 12 seconds before going back inside. And the guards who were typically at the front desk were also not there that day, instead assigned to so-called patient watch inside. Laura lost consciousness as emergency crews searched an area at the bottom of the hill for her. They ultimately found her about 10 minutes later after she placed the 911 call, and by then she'd gone into cardiac arrest. 6 days later, Laura Levis, an otherwise healthy, active 34-year-old woman, died of hypoxic brain injury. In the years since, Peter DeMarco has been fighting for reforms at hospitals across the state to make sure that what happened to Laura never happens again. He started with a company that runs Somerville Hospital. It's called the Cambridge Health Alliance, which DeMarco says ultimately acknowledged their mistakes, apologized for what happened to Laura, and made some structural changes at the hospital. Now he's getting some backing on Beacon Hill, with two bills before the legislature just announced today. One of them, dubbed Laura's Law, would require new rules that mandate all Massachusetts hospitals ensure safe patient access to emergency rooms at all times. Another bill would remove the $100,000 cap on malpractice damage awards in cases of extreme harm. Peter DeMarco joins me now. Good to see you again, Peter. Along with the sponsors of two of those bills, Senator Patricia Jehlen. Good to see you, Senator, and Representative Christine Barber. Same to you, Representative, both from Somerville. What's the genesis of this legislative effort? Did they find you or you found them? How did it happen?
That's a good question. I think Senator Jehlen reached out to me first. After reading the story and after being pretty much outraged by the story, I think. Is that fair to say, Senator?
Yeah.
And wanting to know what you could do to help make change, the changes I've called for in the story.
As I say, you both represent Somerville. Did either of you know anything about what happened to Laura until you read his Globe magazine thing? So the hospital never reached out to legislators locally, said anything. Representative, starting with you, if I may, I just gave a very brief summary of the first bill, so-called Laura's Law. I have to say, as a layperson, I would say I'm stunned that a law like that is necessary until you see what happened at Somerville Hospital. Is this an outlier, or is your indication that there are other places that need this kind of upgrade?
Well, what we know from the research that Pete has done is that there aren't regulations out there that the Department of Public Health does to set standards for lighting, for signage. So this could actually happen anywhere in Massachusetts. And frankly, I was shocked as well. And so we're hopeful that these changes will bring significant change.
Is that your sense, Senator, as well? Is that this could not be a one-shot deal?
I think the main thing is we're trying to do prevention, not catching people later. So while we don't know how many other hospitals have inadequate signage or don't have doorbells, we want them all to have that.
You know, as a person, I live in Cambridge, right across the way, and I didn't know Peter before, nor was lucky enough to meet Laura. I didn't know her. The thing that was most troubling to me, I'm not sure is addressed here. I'm curious why. At least in what Peter has written, immediately after Laura's death, the hospital said to DPH, a nurse and a security guard searched the property for her. That wasn't true. That the lightings and sign were okay. That wasn't true. That she was found by the ambulance bay, not by the emergency door. That wasn't true. And that Peter had been notified. That wasn't true. Is there anything in this legislation, or might there be ultimately, Senator, that deals with complete transparency with, forget the public, with people who love somebody who's had an unfortunate or a horrible outcome? Is that something
That's not part of these bills, but do want to commend CHA, Cambridge Health Alliance, for launching an investigation, better late than never, into all of the things that went wrong. Not just what happened that night, all the things that went wrong that night, but also the things that happened afterwards that were definitely mistakes.
But they did that after the
That's
Phillips, or a
right.
couple of years later.
That's right.
Would
And
you
we-
be open to the? I mean, again, I don't sure. Do you care? I mean, when you're trying to reform things going forward so that others don't live through what she and you and her family lived through, is that of concern to you? Is that something you'd like to see addressed? Or
I
no?
certainly don't want any family to go through what we went through. I don't want anyone to feel what I felt. Yeah, I would love for hospitals and healthcare organizations to be honest and tell the truth to their patients when mistakes are made. I know that there are certainly movements out there. There's the disclose an apology movement. Movements that
where an apology would not be usable in litigation against the hospital or a medical person, so they would feel freer to do it, is what you're talking about.
correct.
Can we talk about the second bill just for a second? This is obviously more. I assume, is anybody opposing this first one? I know it's just in its early stages.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Okay.
We just filed it.
The second one is a tougher one, I guess. Removing, as I said, the $100,000 cap. And as you've written, it costs more to just pay your lawyers than the amount you'd win if you won the full amount. What's the rationale, by the way, for a cap that's so low? And by the way, your bill, from what I understand, would only be in extreme cases,
Right.
not
Wrongful
in the
death.
average rate.
Right.
So what's the rationale for having a cap? So if you go to a hospital that's not covered by the cap, you can be fully compensated for the harm. But if you go to a nonprofit or a public hospital, you can't. What's the rationale for that?
We'll find out.
What we're trying to do is level the playing field. So no matter what hospital you end up at, especially in an emergency situation, that if, God forbid, something adverse happens, you can get compensation for it. It shouldn't matter if it's a nonprofit, for-profit, public hospital.
Are you hopeful about this piece of this?
I'm always hopeful.
But I mean specifically about this. Can you imagine a circumstance? These are some of the most powerful institutions, particularly the nonprofits in Massachusetts.
They are.
Can
The
you imagine?
nonprofits serve most of the people in Massachusetts. And the question is why people who go there cannot get compensation if they're, for example, another story Peter told was about a family whose child had been permanently, terribly disabled. And the hospital had no legal responsibility for his care after his life had been permanently.
And for people who have not followed this story closely, even though the statute of limitations, I believe, doesn't run until September,
Sure.
You've agreed not to bring litigation against either Cambridge Health Alliance or the Somerville Hospital, correct?
Yeah, I mean the whole point of me bringing this bill forward, especially, is for other families. You asked about the $100,000. Let me back up a step. I mean this law was created in the 1970s. All right, that number has never changed. It never changed in terms of the public cap. The private cap was, the not-for-profit cap, the charitable cap, was once $20,000.
And then Deval Patrick's.
And it went up to 100,000.
100,000. Yeah.
But once again, in this day and age we live in, that money it doesn't even cover your legal costs. There have been families for decades who have had no real legal recourse when their loved one has been severely harmed or even killed by medical errors. They just have nowhere to go. For me, changing the status quo for the next family is what I'm trying to do. I am not going to sue anybody. I cannot advocate for a new law that's going to benefit me or our families. If any legislator has any concern about that, the statute of limitations for my right to sue anyone runs out in September 2019. You know what? Wait till the next day then to pass this legislation. That's fine with me.
Can I? By the way, we emailed Cambridge Health Alliance today to see what they thought about this legislation. The first response we got was, CHA wholeheartedly supports efforts to honor the memory of Laura Levis. I'll skip ahead. We look forward to both the continuing dialogue with stakeholders and the insights. And we got that, which didn't answer our questions. We wrote back again and said, do you support the legislation? And here's the response. We support the intent of the effort and hope to provide feedback that helps shape the legislation in a way that can be practically implemented. I don't know what that means, but I guess my question to you is, if they aren't willing to support your legislation, why are you willing to agree not to sue them?
Well, I do think they're a little apples and oranges here. I mean, what Cambridge Health Alliance is saying is, at the moment, they haven't said yay or nay for sure.
That's correct. They support the intent, they say.
It's funny because I emailed them this morning as well, and they told me the same thing. So we're on the same page here.
Okay.
So I'm keeping tabs as well, and these two bills are for the whole state. Mm-hmm. These are not necessarily for Cambridge Health Alliance. I have gone to them. They have apologized. They have started, as Senator Jehlen says, they are an independent review that Martha Coakley's leading. She interviewed me a few weeks ago to start off that review. Mm-hmm. They are taking steps. Whether they come out and say we want this bill, we support this bill or not, I would love for that to happen. Is that necessary? No. But what is necessary is that these bills get passed.
One last thing for the two legislators here. Do you worry, I assume you do, or you wouldn't have filed this, that there are other Laura Levises and Peter DeMarcos who, a Laura Levis who's not lucky enough to have a husband who's a journalist that we might not even know about? Is that not?
Of course.
Yeah.
And that's part of the motivation, I assume, yes?
That is all of the motivation, is to protect other people from having the same or similar experience.
I wish you all luck. Representative, thanks so much. Good
Thank
luck
you.
with your effort. Senator, good to see you. Peter, as always.
Thanks.
Keep doing what you're doing. Appreciate it. If you want to weigh in on either of these bills, you can call the State House 617-722-2000. Just ask for your senator and representative. I should also note, as I have every time Peter DeMarco has been on the show, I have done fundraising work for the Cambridge Health Alliance for many years, and my wife represents a bunch of the workers there.